Streaming from Oklahoma's own digital studio, this is OSU Football Update with Jeremie Poplin.
That's right. It's time for an OSU football update as we are getting closer to one of the premier non-conference games of the entire college football season in the state of Oklahoma, and that is Oklahoma State's visit to Outson to take on the Oregon Ducks and Dan Lanning. We've got lots to get into after Mike Gundy met with the media yesterday. Dan Lanning met with the media yesterday, and I don't want to necessarily call it fireworks, but we do at least have a little bit of a situation that I feel like that we probably need to address. So let's welcome in John Holcomb, who joins us now. And John, not in my view, and I feel like you feel the same way, this isn't coaches that are lobbing grenades at each other by any means. This was, I think, maybe a little bit of a setup situation by the Oregon media just to kind of get a reaction out of Dan Lanning.
Mike Gundy spoke quite a bit today and mentioned a lot about how much the resources are here, a lot of spending on the team here, suggested the roster cost $40 million last season, and also said that non-conference scheduling perhaps should be more aligned with budgets. Just didn't know if, with all of those comments, if you had a particular reaction or thoughts about future scheduling or how much there may be a disparity between these programs.
Yeah, it sounds like there is. Listening to him talk, like I said, I got a ton of respect for Coach Gundy. Ultimately, how blessed are we to be in a place that's invested in winning? If you want to be a top 10 team in college football, you better be invested in winning. And we spend to win. Some people save to have an excuse for why they don't, right? And ultimately, like, he's a great coach. They've done an unbelievable job, but I want to be a team that's competing at the highest level. And we're really fortunate to be in that situation. So I can't speak on their situation. I have no idea, what they got in their pockets over there. I'm sure UT Martin maybe didn't have as much as them last week, and they played. So we'll let it play out.
But we'll dive into the nuts and bolts of this. But, I don't think that there's too much the back and forth with Dan Lanning and Mike Gundy, and we'll explain the context of that in a minute. But what was your initial thought before we inform the audience of exactly what was said on this?
Well, first off, I would just say that, and our good friend Robert Allen knows this as well or better than anyone, that Mike Gundy and Dan Lanning know each other, and they're friendly with each other. They've never had an issue with each other. So, some of this is, I would say made for TV, Pop, but I'll just go ahead and say made for digital consumption. So we can just make sure that that's where we are right here. I was at Mike's news conference, as we always are, on Monday. And when he was asked about Oregon, he was very frank. He put a lot of praise on Oregon's program. He said, they're very talented, they're very well coached, they spend a lot of money, and it was, yes, you could almost hear the brakes squealing when he said that with some people, but it's a fact. And I remember thinking that's very much in Mike's MO, but it's also, I didn't really think much about it. Let's just put it that way, and apparently other people have.
I'm like you. I listened to Mike Gundy on Monday afternoon because I was trying to come up with a digital piece for the website, newson6.com. You should check it out, by the way.
That's right.
And everything that Dan Lanning said about about Oklahoma State, that was basically the gist of the article, where we clip it out. And then I go through and find everything that Mike Gundy said about Oregon. And when I walked away from that, I thought there really wasn't a whole lot here. Mike Gundy had nothing but praise for the Oregon program and Dan Lanning. So I didn't understand the true full context of this, John, because I didn't listen to the radio show last night. Guilty as charged. I was busy at the Cat Cafe with my 8-year-old daughter's birthday party, so I didn't listen to the Mike Gundy coaches show. But I did get a chance to go back and listen to it, and that's where a lot of this came from, was his comments actually on the coach's show instead of at the podium during his press conference.
Yeah, but I think the overall tone, you used the word setup as soon as we got started with this today. And I do think that both coaches are using this, chose their words rather carefully, to set up their own, maybe agenda is a little bit too strong a word. But I do think that while I think it's it's a little bit overboard to go where the Oregon media went. You can understand, we're part of the media. You're looking for a juicy headline or whatever. But I do think from Mike's standpoint, you could very easily look at it as now that he's embraced, he understands you've got to pay players, you've got to have money to be able to build a roster and be competitive at the highest level. Why wouldn't he? You point out Oregon is a great example of how things work in college football these days, and it very easily could have been Mike saying, we're paying, but we've still got a ways to go. And if you're Dan Lanning, that whole agenda, if you want to go ahead and call it that, could very simply be this: look at what Oregon did in the non-conference last year. Now, I know they were impressive against Montana State, and they scored 59 points. But you remember how they had those close escapes early before they made their run and had a great season. I think he's like any other coach. He's looking for that one, whatever he can, to use it as a chip on the shoulder, or whatever you want to call it, to make sure that he and his program are ready for this. They're not going to slip up early in the season, kind of like they almost did last year.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and I agree with that. The problem, I think, sometimes where coaches get in a little bit of trouble, John, is that they're not going off of factual numbers. They're going off of what they've heard through the coaching ranks and through the coaching trees on what someone has spent on their roster. Didn't we have a back and forth with Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban a few years ago about the amount of money that was spent on a roster? So when Mike Gundy pulls a number like $40 million out of the air, here's the quote, and we'll play the audio for you as soon as I get through with this. Quote, we spent around $7 million over the last 3 years, and I think Oregon spent close to $40 million the last year alone. When they pull a number out of the air like that, and coaches in general, they're kind of setting themselves up, right, for the pushback that comes from that, because you know this as well as I do. Love them to death. Coaches are just sensitive individuals sometimes. They're control freaks, and they're very sensitive about what gets said about their program. So, of course, Dan Lanning's probably going to fire back.
We have all these series now. We have Arkansas, we have Oregon, we have Alabama home and home coming up. That's just to get things started. But if we would have been in the situation we are now with NIL and all the things that are going on now, at the time the decision was made to schedule those, would you have been more reluctant to do so? Because we see some obvious advantages for some, disadvantages for others. I know that's a loaded question, but I am curious. It's a different deal now.
The truth of the matter is, eventually, they need to get a grasp on how they distribute the money across the board, which it's still hard for me to say that. But because my fear is long-term. My fear is that if there's a lopsided amount of money to 10 or 12 schools in the country, then how does that affect the everyday fan that wants to turn the television on and watch a game between two teams? They want to see a good football game played hard, and they don't want to know who's going to win.
Yes.
Nobody likes to know the ending of the movie. Yes. And my concern is they need to get a grasp at some point, because what I hear chatter from coaches around the country is that non-conference scheduling, and I never thought anybody would ever say this, should be based on the financial situation for each school. So if you have schools, Oregon is paying a lot of money for their team.
Yep.
So from a non-conference standpoint, there's coaches saying they should play teams that are spending the same amount of money.
So what do you figure they are? Probably triple what you pay, ballpark? Or do you know?
There's revenue sharing intact this year.
Yes, so that makes a difference.
Yeah, so some, but they haven't got their hands on it yet.
Gotcha.
So the last 3 years, you didn't have revenue sharing.
Right.
So, and it's funny you mentioned that, because I guessed that the last 3 years that we spent around $7 million over the 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Oregon spent close to 40 last year alone.
Wow.
So that was just 1 year.
Okay.
Now, I might be off a few million, but
what's a few million among friends?
Well, what I'm saying is they're spending a lot of money. They spent a lot of money, and there's some schools that are doing that. But that's the one thing that in the long term in college football that concerns me a little bit is that if we don't get a grasp of it, which we thought we had a grasp of it with this new CSC, but I don't know if that. I think that might be out the window right now. If not, then we're going to it's going to be the same way moving forward. So it's just, I don't know how good it is for college athletics.
Yeah.
But for us, what we do is we got a great group of young men that we get ready and we coach them and love them and get them to play hard and go out and compete.
You bet.
Which they will.
Dan Lanning is a head coach at Oregon. He has a very impressive 36-6 record as a head coach here. Do you know him at all? Are you familiar with him?
Yeah, I know him. Spent some time with him. Good guy. Good football coach. They're going to be well coached. They've invested a lot of money in staff.
Yep.
And he's a good person and a good coach.
We've seen instances of that in the past, but Mike Gundy is also using them as the broader example, in my opinion, of college football and what it takes to compete at the highest level in comparison of just Oklahoma State and Oregon. I mean, we discussed this at the desk earlier today. 97% of college football is looking up at Oregon when it comes to everything that they have in terms of NIL and facilities, the amount of resources that are available to them because of their relationship with Phil Knight. That's no secret. And Mike Gundy is just simply pointing out facts to a certain extent, maybe not to 40 million, but he's pointing out facts that everyone in college football basically already knows.
Well, you can look at this if you're a fan and say, well, I mean, this is all going to blow over by Saturday evening. It's not going to matter anymore because they're not in the same conference. They don't play each other. Yeah, the money thing will still be out there. But you mentioned 97% of college football looking up at them. How close is Texas Tech to not being in that 97% with the influx of money that they have with Cody Campbell? So you can't blame Mike Gundy for making this an issue without making it a negative issue for Oregon, without disparaging Oregon, I should say.
Yeah.
Because he's got a program that they're going to have to go at the end of October to Lubbock to see where Texas Tech is with that $55 million for their entire athletic department, whatever. It's closer than you think if you're sitting there going, well, that's the Big Ten, that's Oregon, it doesn't really matter. It's right in your backyard, pretty much, and it's not going away anytime soon.
Satisfy your sweet tooth with a Brahms old-fashioned banana split. Crafted with a delicious banana, split down the middle and filled with not one, but 3 scoops of Brahms premium ice cream flavors. To complete this masterpiece, all your favorite toppings are poured on each scoop to bring it all together in a perfect harmony of flavor. Treat yourself to an old-fashioned banana split at Brahms, where every spoonful leaves you wanting more.
No, because the rules and the game is changing by the minute. And Texas Tech is the prime example of that. This is not the Red Raiders of the past where they're yelling, "Go Raiders!" while someone's trying to conduct an interview at all. By the way, still one of my favorite clips of all time that happened. But it's constantly evolving, and Texas Tech is creeping up to that area as well. And then Gundy goes on with the non-conference scheduling. This is the one thing I love about Gundy is that he's not short on opinions. I don't necessarily would say that I agree with Gundy on everything that he says. I don't even know what percentage I'm in, probably somewhere in the 60% range with things. But I at least like that he has opinions, and the non-conference scheduling aspect based off of where your program is at financially is an interesting one that I haven't heard a head coach bring up before.
Yeah, and it shows you his mind's always working. And, of course, Lanning played off of that by saying, I know that I'm not sure UT Martin is the same ballpark financially as OSU is. So he picked up on that as well.
Yeah.
It makes for some interesting to keep the matchup in the news cycle outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma City, Eugene, and wherever else CBS is going to pump it up. Which it should, by the way, because just a reminder, you can see the game on News on 6 at 2:30 on Saturday. When you kind of hear that from Mike, on the surface, my mind kind of goes to, are we talking about the super conferences, or are we talking, and then the levels of college football that you could very easily see something getting broken into 2 or 3 pieces, and then it's going to be, well, what's your budget? And you're going to be either in the top tier or the middle tier or the bottom tier. Who knows? I don't think that's on the immediate horizon here, but there is there's a certain train of thought to that. But Mike's, to the bigger point of Mike's news conferences, and I said this with Scott File, our talented photographer and digital reporter, yesterday. He was there with me, and I said, you could pull any one of maybe a dozen quotes of random things from almost every Mike Gundy Monday news conference, and it would grab your attention on one level or another, whether it's the money that Oregon spends, to referencing with Zane Flores going on the road for the first time as a starting quarterback, and what happened with Mike. He went to Lincoln to play Nebraska the first time he started on the road as quarterback, and he's describing how he felt walking out into the frigid Lincoln Stadium, Memorial Stadium, and he described himself as looking like Randy, the little brother from Christmas Story. And then, of course, the way that somebody else found out about it was because he lifted his shirt up in an effort to show Nebraska's defensive half shirts that they were wearing. And, I mean, that might have been the most viral moment of the whole thing yesterday. So,
or his wife calling and then making the joke about her not waking up until afternoon, which was hilarious, by the way. And then he played it off with the crowd. That was another viral moment, in my opinion, to your point of there's multiples of those per Mike Gundy press conference.
Yeah, we could do a dozen podcasts and break each one of those things down, and we'd still have material to cover.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I want to say, back to your original point, my opinion here, Mike Gundy was not doing anything that was disrespectful of Dan Lanning and Oregon's program by any means. We've all been around when coaches have been disrespectful, or you can read between the lines on things that they were saying, and I didn't pick up an ounce of that from Mike Gundy when it comes to Dan Lanning and the Oregon program. And Dan had a little bit of a wry smile on his face when he was asked these questions and he was answering these questions, but Dan handled it perfectly for his fan base. Dan handled it perfectly for his donor base. And the part of me that read that smile was, it was like, yeah, this is Mike Gundy. Like, of course he's going to say something about this, but I didn't come away from that thinking, oh my gosh, these two aren't going to want to shake hands, or we're going to have another situation like we had at OSU Texas from a few years ago.
No, yeah, we're not getting Mr. Mensa out on the field.
You don't even get me started on Mr. Mensa.
You're exactly right, Pop. They're both playing to their respective fan bases. Why wouldn't you expect? Why would you expect Mike Gundy to not say something when there's an opportunity maybe to remind people, hey, we need even more money here?
Yes.
And if you're Dan Lanning, why wouldn't you say, hey, I love playing at a place where you have resources? I mean, it's the easiest thing to do.
And you're a 28-point dog. And John, if you go up there and you play well, on top of maybe coming away with a win, isn't that something else that you're supposed to, pardon the term here, but flex on people about? I use that way too much. But if I'm Mike Gundy, and knowing what they've spent on their roster, knowing they had an undefeated season, what we're going up there against, and we come back and play well with this version of this team, like that's something else that he's pointed out in a calculated way for his fan base to kind of understand if they go up there and play well.
Yes, I think some people who haven't paid attention to Mike over the years and what he does with the majority of these game week news conferences is, yes, people on the outside may say, man, that dude's crazy, but he's crazy like a fox, which reminds me of the old Second City television network. The SCTV show is like, yeah, he's crazy like a snake, and it made no sense on purpose. But Mike has a purpose. I mean, very rarely does he say things, but we all do, where there's really no thought behind it, or some sort of angle there. And I think that the message that's getting lost to a certain degree with all of this, at least nationally, is the assumption that you are going to call plays. And I had somebody text me the other day, do you think the game plan will be, and they said this, kind of like an old Pat Jones game plan, where you run the ball, try to shorten the game, and get out of there healthy. And I know Pat was trying to win games. So maybe this person who texted me thought it was opposite. But I know Pat was trying to win games. But there's the logic behind that. But in this case, with Zane Flores, given Hoss Haney's injury, do you go up there and call the game in a certain way where you're not going to expose your quarterback to the one you have to potential injury? And Mike was very adamant when he said, we're not going to go play scared. I mean, that's kind of what's been lost with all this other stuff going on. But that message behind closed doors to the team could care less about what he's saying about the money at Oregon and what Lanning's saying back. That they are, Brian McCoy Jr., the linebacker, we got to talk to him yesterday, and he was adamant about, look, I don't, in terms of being an underdog, he goes, I don't pay attention to that stuff. In fact, his actual phrase was, I don't feed into the media narrative, which has become a much more used phrase among people, not in sports, but in all walks of life anymore. But so they're a focused group. They know the task is daunting, but I think sometimes that it's easier to band together on the road because you got your own small group. You go on the road, and then when you have something like this, there is no margin for error. So you tend to, at least my Gundy's teams do, tend to prepare better for games like this, even though the spread is maybe bigger than any that he faced even in his first year or after his first year.
See, John, I'm going to change that and start I don't believe in the Vegas narrative when it comes to the point spread. I don't know if that if that works or not. We don't necessarily quite set the point spread.
We can set the line
through the media for that at all. But I see his point and understand it completely. Look, that's what happens behind closed doors. Like, you're looking for things to galvanize with your teammates and with that collective group that gets to go up there and try to do something special. So anything that you need to put a chip on your shoulder when you get to go play in one of the toughest environments, from what I understand, and loudest environments that exist in college football, which gets me to my final question, because I know we've got more of these coming up through the course of the week. How excited are you? Is this a new stadium experience for you? I love it when I get to go to new places, especially ones that have the reputation the way that Outson does.
Yeah, no, I'm thrilled to get to go. Been to Eugene before, but not for a game at Oregon. It was the game in 2019 at Oregon State, and the team just stayed in Eugene. And actually, we're staying at the same hotel for Oregon this time that we did for Oregon State in Corvallis. I'm assuming that the visiting locker room area is going to be much more palatable than the one at Oregon State, because the one at Oregon State back there, then maybe they've improved it. But a quick story: the one at Oregon State, you had to leave the football stadium, walk across the street behind the I think it was the east end zone stands or east side stands, and go into old Gill Coliseum where they play basketball, and the visiting locker room is in Gill Coliseum.
Okay.
It was there. So that was interesting. Cowboys didn't really have a problem with Oregon State that night. This one, yes, it's going to be different. It is, it's a different world in Oregon to begin with.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, but it's a different world. You don't pump your own gas there, and if you want to know the story behind that, just hit me up sometime. But it is, the countryside is beautiful, mountainous, all of this great stuff.
The coast is great.
And so we'll just see. But I'm looking forward to that actual atmosphere. And, I wonder if now that the money back and forth has become an issue, that if some of the Oregon fans or the media up there are picking up on that poll that named Boone Pickens Stadium the best college football atmosphere in the country now. That would seem to be right about on time, Pop, maybe by Wednesday afternoon.
No doubt. I got family in Saskatoon, Oregon, which is right outside of Portland. And if anyone's going up there, highly recommend it. I know this is a completely different part of Oregon, but check out the Tillamook Cheese Factory. You'll greatly enjoy yourself when you go up there for sure. It's right there along the coast. Oh, and watch out for Puddles. Even though Puddles, the Oregon Duck, had the unfortunate incident where he ran out of the tunnel and cartoonish like his head rolled off when he fell and just kind of rolled in a half semicircle. And then Puddles maybe ran a 4-3, or the person portraying Puddles ran back into the locker.
That was the most important thing, but it's kind of a metaphor, isn't it, for some folks up in the Pacific Northwest as they lose their head.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I just want to know did he make a sound? Because mascots aren't supposed to make a sound when he actually fell and the head rolled off. I hope that he stayed true to the mascot form and mantra, that he did not make a sound at all. John, appreciate you for taking a few moments to join us to kind of break down the craziness that has been Mike Gundy and Dan Lanning. And it's really not that big a deal. I think that's the overall point of this. And we wish you safe travels, my friend, up to Eugene this weekend.
Pop, thanks, as well to you in Las Cruces. We'll compare notes.
El Paso, baby. I'm staying in El Paso this weekend and then driving up to Las Cruces. So, yeah, fun times indeed for us coming up this weekend. All right, that'll do it for us. We will see you next time here as we do another OSU Update Pod, courtesy of our friends at Brahms. Thank you to Brahms, by the way, for jumping on board here with a brand new sponsorship here with all of our team podcasts. And we'll see you next time from the Digital Desk.
Thank you for watching this Oklahoma's Own Digital Studios sports presentation. Stay with News on 6, online and on television anytime for the latest news, weather, and sports.